Hello to all again, and a very warm welcome. I found something quite interesting. It was another Christian scholar, a Christian author of the 2nd century that I had missed, and strangely enough, I'd read about this guy before a couple of times, and it just completely skipped my mind to include this man in my 2nd century mentions of Jesus Christ, and I've done a video on 3 of these people a few videos ago, and it's very well. I think it's very interesting and important to know what the Christians of the 2nd century were talking about regarding Jesus, because we have no Christians in the 1st century that we know of, apart from the Gospel authorship, which does not appear really to have been 1st century stuff, based upon what the 2nd century Christian authors and commentators are talking about. So I'm going to go through this man now, and we're going to see exactly what he knew and didn't know, which is so interesting. It shows you how minimal the understanding of the historical Jesus was in the 2nd century, and of course comports very neatly with the mythicist model. What Aristades of Athens knew and didn't know about Jesus, a factual assessment and comparison with Justin Martyr. So Justin Martyr, of course, was writing in the 150 CE. Introduction. Aristades of Athens, a Christian apologist of the 2nd century CE, authored one of the earliest Christian apologies addressed to a Roman emperor, traditionally dated to the reign of Hadrian, 117 to 138 CE, who ruled the Roman Empire for 21 years following the death of Emperor Trajan. Some scholars suggest a later date, possibly as late as the reign of Antoninus Pius, 138 to 161, or even Marcus Aurelius, 161 to 180. His work survives most completely in a Syriac translation embedded in the medieval Barlaam and Josaphat narrative, with fragmentary Greek and Armenian versions. What Aristides knows. Aristides provides a brief theological summary of Christian beliefs. He's talking, by the way, about lots of pagan gods and why Christianity and Jesus is better than those pagan gods. More precisely, why Christianity is a better religion, really. What Aristides knows. So here we go. Jesus is called the Son of God, the Most High. Jesus was born from a Hebrew virgin birth, but the name of the virgin is not given. God came down from heaven and was clothed in flesh, the incarnation. Jesus had 12 disciples now. Might be the first time this is said. If Paul is not talking about the 12 disciples, and mentioning disciples outside of the 12, which he does in Corinthians. He was pierced by the Jews, a vague reference to his death, of course. He died and was buried. He rose again 3 days later. He ascended into heaven. His disciples went out and preached his greatness. Aristides refers obliquely to a gospel being read among Christians, but gives no direct quotation. The phrase here, so carrying on now, pierced by the Jews, may echo Isaiah 53:5. He was pierced for our transgressions, a passage often cited by early Christians as prophetic of Jesus' suffering. However, Aristides does not explicitly link to Isaiah or quote any scriptural text. He does, however, reference once to a gospel read in Christian communities. In chapter 2 of the Syriac version, he states, "This is taught in that gospel, which a little while ago was spoken among them, and being preached. And you also, if you will read therein, may perceive the power which belongs to it." This passage suggests that a gospel, likely a written and preached text, was circulating among Christians in his time. However, no gospel is named. No sayings or quotations from Jesus are provided. The text is referenced only for its power, but not its content, of course. This reinforces that Aristides either had only limited knowledge of gospel traditions or chose not to engage with them in any detail. But it resonates well with what we know about other Christians, only referencing one gospel or a kind of creedal series of written maybe texts that might have been completely minimal on any historicity, and we do find evidence for that in other Christian writers, Clement and so on. So what Aristides does not know or mention, there is no mention of Pontius Pilate or Roman involvement in Jesus' death, no reference to crucifixion as a method of execution. The word crucified, of course, does not appear. No mention of Nazareth, Galilee, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, or any other geographic location. No parables, miracles, exorcisms, or public teachings of Jesus. No names of individual disciples, Peter, James, or John, of course. No citation from the Old Testament, which doesn't fit with what other Christians are doing constantly, which is pulling Jesus out of the New Testament. No reference to gospel names, Matthew, Mark, and so on. No mention of a church structure, bishops, or sacraments, of course. No quotations or paraphrases from the canonical gospels, even when such material would have strengthened his apologetic. And this is quite important. You would expect to see some kind of knowledge here of what Jesus might have said when he's critiquing gods and so on, pagans. There is such a vibrant and detailed and the strength of the Gospels gives moral arguments a huge weight, and it's strange that he never talks about any. No parables, none of the real, no Sermon on the Mount, kind of echoing of the Sermon on the Mount, nothing like that at all. So we have comparisons with Justin Martyr, writing around 150, of course, provides a richer and more detailed account of Jesus. Key references here, so he does include a mention of Pilate. He does mention crucifixion. Gospel quotations or paraphrases, at least. I don't think they're gospel phrases. They're too free. The flow is just not quite there. But at least Justin does. Mentions of miracles. Justin does do this. Parables and teachings, again, Justin does mention this. So he also uses the Old Testament for prophecy, like a lot, Justin, that is, and he does mention the baptism and Eucharist. So this is Justin. Of course, Aristides does not. So we'll just read on. Implications for the mythicist case. The content and omissions in Aristides' apology are significant for evaluating the mythicist claims, even if the apology was written as early as 125. Its lack of historical detail about Jesus' life suggests that such details were not yet universally known or considered essential. Okay, so the absence here, miracles, geography, crucifixion, Pilate, and so on, is primary and theological. He is a theological entity, Jesus. This is part here of his account could easily be drawn from early Christian creedal formulas, not eyewitness traditions or canonical gospels. This is another puzzle piece in a series now of other puzzle pieces which are unanimous on this absence of any knowledge on the Christian, the gospel accounts, compared to Justin. Aristides is far less committed to the historical narrative, suggesting that even within this same general period, Christians varied widely in what they emphasized or knew about Jesus. And this is when Jesus is really supposed to be, had put his shoes on, so to speak, in a broader context. And now people were walking all over this part of the world and spreading the message, the good word, and so on. This helps us understand that maybe this is a time period before Justin, but after Paul and so on, where you're beginning to see the historization of Jesus into some kind of person. It might be a Docetist Jesus that he's talking about. He clothed in flesh, that he came down, born of a virgin. But again, it's like Paul says, I think the same. Does he say virgin? Born of a woman. But you're beginning to see there's a very clear chart here that's coming into focus. So manuscript history and rediscovery. No manuscript or fragment of Aristades' Apology survives from antiquity, of course. The text was effectively lost for over 1,500 years. It's first mentioned by Eusebius in the early 4th century in Ecclesiastical History 433-3-4, who states Aristides addressed his apology to Hadrian. So we have some kind of reasonably clear potential there that it's Hadrian. Rediscovered in 1878. It's a 10th century Syriac manuscript, so this is old. A Christian Buddha narrative, that's interesting. Barlaam and Josaphat, Greek fragments, of course, are found, but these are all found in the 19th century again. So it's there. It certainly seems to have existed. Armenian fragmentary version located in the 20th century and confirming parts of the text as well. This earliest physical witness to the Apology is from the 10th century though. So dating the Apology, again, we probably don't need to go through that. The literary tone resembles later apologists like Athenagoras as well. Athenagoras, who we've been through, about 177 CE. So it's not necessarily dated to the 120s, 130s. It could be later, but it seems to tell us about a Christianity before Justin's knowledge. So that's quite interesting. So just to clear up and finish off, these points lead many scholars to cautiously date the text to the mid-2nd century or later, possibly under Antoninus Pius or even Marcus Aurelius. The conclusion here is that Aristides' Apology provides a snapshot of a Jesus who is incarnate, crucified and risen, but with no earthly ministry, no locations, no miracles, no parables and so on, no Sermon on the Mount, and no Roman legal context. While it resonates with Justin Martyr's apologetic theme, its omissions are substantial. For the mythicist scholars, this supports the argument that the historical Jesus was a later narrative developed, laid into an originally theological or celestial Christ figure. Aristides' testimony, far from undermining mythicism, may bolster it by illustrating how sparse and abstract the earliest non-gospel references to Jesus actually were. I'm going to leave that there. Something to consider. It's the Christian sources themselves, I think, betray exactly how the evolution of Christianity in the first 2 centuries evolved. That is quite important. I think it's very interesting to me. It's all something to consider when you would expect the Christian story to have exploded onto the scene with all of this knowledge of Jesus' life, everything he did, all of the things in the Gospels. Of course, they're very contradictory. It shows you more that they're mythic. But yeah. That it's not what we find. We find minimal history and almost a completely mythic celestial Messiah right at the beginning. Christ Before Jesus is a great book for this. This fella here, Aristides, is in that book. I forgot. I guess I skimmed over it when I was reading it. and completely forgot about the guy. Now I am hopefully, faithfully and diligently reporting on him too. So we have another puzzle piece to think about. Please like and subscribe. I haven't been saying that recently. If you enjoyed this video, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you.